Hello and welcome to TEC Bike Parts. Today we're going to be talking about some of the work we're doing on Royal Enfields. Starting off with the Himalayan. Now I've had the new camshaft out for a few months now, and we're starting to get a lot of feedback from the people who've installed them. All very good, I hasten to say. We had a lot of skeptics thinking that we couldn't get the 20% power that we're claimed with. And if you read all the independent reviews that they're on our, we've put some of them on our web shop. And if you look on Trustpilot and on Facebook, there's lots of people who you can contact yourself if you want a bit of reassurance, who've actually fitted the cam. They've run it in and they've done quite a few miles on them already, and everybody's absolutely delighted with them. Biggest problem at the moment is getting them made fast enough. We're working on that. We're improving the sizes of batches we're getting made, and we should be caught up with the backlog pretty soon. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the development testing that we've been doing on the bike, and some of the changes that we've made that's come about by that testing. Mostly one of the things that we looked at when we were developing this bike was heat management and the heat flow across the bike. Now these bikes are designed to work in very hot climates, and more on that later because we've sort of discovered one or two little dodges that we can do with it. On the inlet side, we've had the DNA air filter for these for quite a while now, but we were just cutting down the standard intake plate because the standard intake plate was quite restrictive. I'll show you that in a moment when I take this off, and I'll also show you what we've done about heat management as well. But that was one of the things that came about, and we were also trying to get a hot enough temperature here in the UK so we could do some serious testing. Now we've just come through a pretty hot spell with plus 30 degree temperatures on a regular basis, and we've been doing a lot of city riding and a lot of technical trail riding, really steep sections to really cook the engine basically to see how we can get on with it. Now one of the things that came about when we were talking to various people about this, I got a call from one of the ex-development engineers who had worked initially on the Himalayan, who'd subsequently been working at Bruntonthorpe development site, and now he's actually moved on. He's working for the Royal Enfield importer in Europe. But it was very interesting what he had to say. When they were developing this bike initially, they did have problems in temperatures in cities like Mumbai, where in the summertime it easily gets over 40 degrees. I think the maximum temperature they had last year was about 43 degrees. And you can imagine an air-cooled engine in basically stop-start traffic in a city centre is going to fry. And I'm amazed they can actually get this bike to run reliably in those sort of temperatures. And he said one of the things they had to do was increase the recommended valve clearances on them, basically because they were cutting out in plus 40 degree traffic. Now we don't get plus 40 degrees. I mean, the maximum temperatures we get here are very low 30s, and that's absolute maximum. We live in Northern Europe, and I felt it was quite crazy to run Mumbai type valve clearances when we didn't need to. So I've actually reduced the valve clearances on this bike. Talking in metric, the standard inlet settings, what the Royal Enfield recommend is 0.08 millimeters to 0.1 millimeters on the inlet, which is about 4 thou. Now I've reduced, I tend to work in thou, I like thou, it's less likely to make mistakes on. So I've gone from that down 1 thou on the inlet to 3 thou, and on the exhaust it was in the range between 0.23 and 0.25 was the recommended setting, which was between about 9 and 10 thou, which is quite large for a valve setting. And the engines were quite tappety, so I've reduced that to 8 thou, and all the testing we've done, we've actually done some testing in California in the heat, but it's actually been too hot to ride out there at the moment because they've had a bit of a, I don't know if you've seen on the news, they've had this heat bubble hanging over America, and California is absolutely cooking. You don't really want to be outdoors without aircon in your car or something, and riding a bike with your gear on, you just absolutely cook. So they've done a bit of testing with those valve settings, and they haven't had any problems. But above 30, I wouldn't recommend going smaller than the recommended settings. So that's the way we're doing it at the moment. I found it does run nicer and quieter with the 2 thou, the 1 thou off the recommended settings on both the inlet and exhaust. So if you want to try that, give it a try by all means, but don't do it if you live in a very hot climate, either Southern Europe, Northern Africa, somewhere like that. Just stick with the recommended ones. Right, further on, we did a lot of work with sensors on the bike, monitoring oil and air temperature and airflow into the airbox temperature settings, things like that. And I'm sure you'll know that it's a well documented thing that the ambient air temperature sensor on these reads incredibly high. Now, like most people, I thought, oh, it's just a dodgy sensor. But actually, when we check the sensor, it's incredibly accurate. It's accurate to about 1 degree C. So that set the alarm bells ringing. And I knew that a lot of people were relocating them from down under the seat here to up near the headstock. So we did that, and the reading dropped about 10 degrees C instantly. And you can see that set the alarm bells running. So we did a lot of testing on temperatures across the bike, when it's riding, when it's stuck in traffic, when you're riding off-road, etc. And I'm going to show you a bit more about what we've done that one. I'll move the camera down. And it is quite important, what we've found for the performance of the bike, that the engine needs cold air. And by the management of the heat over the bike, we've managed to achieve that a little bit. Also, we've got the gauge reading correctly now as well. You may notice that I've actually changed the screen on this bike. One of the things that was bugging me about this bike was, no matter what helmet I wore, I've got a really quiet Schubert helmet, Bellstar helmet. No matter what helmet I wore, it felt like I was sitting in a wind tunnel. I was getting lots of wind noise, and I put this down to the fact that I'd raised the seat and I was sitting up higher above the screen. So I tried a taller screen, a medium height screen. I tried a screen with a deflector on the top, and a lot of them actually made it worse, not better. So I was actually changing the headlight, and I rode the bike without the screen on, and it was like a revelation. No noise. And I thought, God, this is what the point is. The screen is causing turbulence, and I'm getting all this noise around the front of my helmet. So I've put this short screen on, which I may shorten even more, and that has improved the situation 100%. It's now much quieter, so much so that I don't even bother wearing earplugs for most journeys, only if I'm going on the motorway or something like that. But before, anything over about 45 miles an hour, I was getting horrendous wind noise. So if you're suffering from that, particularly if you've raised the bike or you're a taller rider, try that. Just try taking the screen off first of all, and I think you'll see what I'm getting at with that. But we are thinking about doing a cut down screen for them. These are available from one of our suppliers, and again, if there's interest, we may start doing those as well. I think I covered things like raising the handlebars for off-road riding, for standing on the pegs. That has transformed the comfort. I could virtually ride all day standing up on the pegs on this. It's so comfortable, just gripping onto the tank with your knees. And it gives your backside a bit of a rest as well if you're on a really long journey. As before, I was sort of stooping forward and looking at the top of my helmet, and the difference of 30mm made a big difference on that. But I'm going to move the camera now, and we'll go into the side panel, and we'll show you the things we've done for the heat management. Oh, also before we do that, we used to just cut the air filter top off. But we've always used DNA air filters. Now DNA have produced air filter plates for this, and they've started making one for the Meteor, an air intake and filter. But they've designed a proper intake plate. Now what I did, I sent them our cut down one, because they've got a state-of-the-art electronic airflow rig, and a Himalayan airbox as well. and they ran it with our plate on, and they said it was getting a small improvement, but only about 5% airflow improvement. So they've come up with this big bore intake to go in the filter, but it has got a proper sealant system, so it seals the filter and doesn't allow any air to bypass, because some of the ones I've seen coming out of India don't have an effective sealant system on here, and they actually let unfiltered air into your engine, which is what you don't want. Really simple to fit, I mean, literally put it on there, but also because of the heat management system and the fact that it gets so hot under here, we have been experimenting not only with diverting the air inside here, but also with the way the air comes into the side panel. Now, the air normally comes underneath this panel, but we get a bit of a hot spot, and as you can see, I've been experimenting with different holes in the side panel. Now, this is just a rough one that we were doing when I was checking, and I'm going to modify this one. I'm actually going to put a nice oval hole here at the back, followed by one here as well with some nice decorative mesh in it, just to do a finished job, because I've sort of butchered that one now. There is a few of these aluminium side panels on the market that have got vents at the front. That is totally wrong, because that only lets hot air in and exacerbates the problem of heat building up behind this side panel. All this area here gets extremely hot of the airflow off the oil cooler and off the cylinder heads and from round here. So Royal Enfield have the air intake pointing in this direction, and they have a gap underneath here that allows some cold air in out of the hot airflow. But there's too much hot air comes around here and causes a hot spot up here, which doesn't seem to circulate, and the temperature just starts to rise and rise in here, and it rises in the airbox as well, which is not good for power. You need nice cold air, dense air for power. Then it can make quite a difference to how crispy the bike feels in your actual performance figures. Like I say, we've done some experimenting, chopping and changing. We had them in the front here at first on a different side panel, and that actually made the temperature worse because the hot air was diving into here and blowing the cold air out. So you need some ventilation at the rear, at the top here, we found from experimentation, and also lower down here. This lets more cold air in, and this lets the heat out without it getting in. So that's what we found. It's also in relation to the rider's leg. The turbulence helps to evacuate the hot air out of here as well. A lot of trial and error to get to that point with the temperature monitoring, but it does work. And we've seen the temperatures in the airbox come down as much as 10 degrees C on a hot day. Cold air means power. Basically, it's as simple as that. Ask any engine tuner, it is the optimum to get cold air into an engine. Hence bonnet scoops on cars, and you know, there was a Kawasaki once that had big tubes coming up here onto the fairing that they let cold air directly into the airbox from the front. It's all of this is in search of cold air, and this system doesn't particularly get cold air. So if you take off your side panel, now there's only 3 screws that hold this panel on. That one there's a dummy, so don't waste your time trying to get it off. Now, what we've done to mitigate the airflow here, you know, this is what we normally do with the air intake. We normally just cut this angled part off, and we get this clear intake into here. It still allows the cold air to come up from down here, but because this directly didn't point to the cold air, you actually get quite a bit more cold air in by doing it. And you can actually do this yourself if you want to save some money and not put the intake plate on there. You can do that, and it does work, but you only get about a 5% gain. Now what we've done here is we've used some double-sided closed cell foam. This actually sits tight against the side panel, and it actually stops hot air coming round from the engine into the airbox. Now you'll see we've extended the wire up. This is where the sensor normally sits, up here in this corner, and this is where the temperature absolutely rockets up in here. And like I said, don't take my word for it, you can monitor yourself if you've got the original position of the sensor. You'll see if you move it by extending the wires up around the headstock area, the temperature will instantly drop 10 degrees. So I'll pull this off now and I'll show you how the new air filter fits. So that's the DNA filter that we normally have on them. We've been selling those for quite a while, they're very popular. Now as you can see, that it has this sealing arrangement on here, so no unfiltered air can get into the airbox. It's also sealed around this outside edge. Now the new filter ring, which flows massively more amount of airflow, we'll show you the data sheet. As you can see, the sealing ring fits in there really snugly and pushes tight against the air filter, so there's no possibility of getting any unfiltered air in there. Now as you'll see, these holes, they're just made up there that you don't have the locating peg because it's not required, because it doesn't need to point in any particular direction now. And just pop your screws back in there. Now, I don't know if you can see there, but basically all the air for the engine comes up from underneath here, which is because your legs here, it's actually out of a lot of the hot airflow. But like I say, we were getting hot air coming in directly in this way, so it is quite important to block this off, and we've done this in two different ways. Yeah, what often looks very obvious, thinking, oh yeah, that's an obvious thing to do, is not as obvious as you think, because it still actually diverts the air over to an angle, and this edge isn't ideal for getting the air in, whereas this is much more aerodynamic. So like I say, the difference between this is about 5% improvement to 35% improvement. And like I say, it's not always obvious looking at something why that is so, but when you put it on the airflow bench, it doesn't lie. It could be something to do with the length of this intake or something, I don't know. But anyway, this is a much bigger improvement than just butchering your old one. Or if you're using the one that hasn't got the top cut off, a massive improvement over that. Like I say, what we've done to manage the airflow is we've actually used some neoprene here across the back of the engine that doesn't allow the air to come up and around the airbox, so it diverts it outwards. And like I say, there's little areas where it's still going to get through, so we actually use this foam that sits tight against the inlet panel as well. And like I say, people think, oh well, we'll put holes here to let cold air in, but all it does is it draws in hot air and not cold air when we've done some experimentation, and it can actually make the inside of there hotter than what it was. So it's important that you don't let this hot air in from the front and draw your cold air in from here. And if you want extra air in, about this area here is where you want it. That's what we found. Not directly in front of the air filter. For some reason that doesn't seem to work very well, and just gives you a lot more noise. This seems to give a baffled effect and works better around here. A couple of about inch diameter holes at this point, and what we found is about 3-inch diameter or 25mm diameter holes along the top here, and that lets the air flow in and out. It lets cold air in and lets the heat escape out of here. What I've also done as well, I've actually put some closed cell foam across the back of the petrol tank between the top of the airbox and the fuel tank to stop the air flowing up under the seat and around here. Again, it's only a few millimeters of foam, but it makes a difference. And I think that's about it for what we've found with the heat flow management. It does make an improvement. It sounds a bit, you know, odd that cold air would make that difference, but like I say, cold air is the holy grail of a lot of engine tuners to get it in there, and because it does make a difference. Cold air is denser, therefore you can put more fuel in as well, and you get more power. It's as simple as that. It's almost like free supercharging. You've probably found that your bike runs better on a cold, damp day, and that's the reason why. Quite a lot of people have been asking the question, will the camshaft or any of these other modifications affect my miles per gallon. Now, we've done quite a few thousands of miles now, and we've actually been monitoring the fuel consumption. We monitored before we did it and monitored after we did it, and we're getting on average 8 miles per gallon more in normal riding. And that's probably mostly because we've been allowed to gear the engine up. It's not revving as much, and you don't seem to be using the throttle as much either. Before, maybe that's because I ride faster or whatever, I don't know. Before, I seemed to be on full throttle almost everywhere, and having to drop gears to trying to get the thing to go. Now you're feathering the throttle a lot, and the revs are much lower, particularly when you're cruising at high speed. And we regularly get over 100 miles to the gallon out of this bike now. It could be that because it's got a lot more miles on it as well. These engines do improve with miles, but the combination of the cam, the sprocket, and maybe a few more miles. I haven't changed my riding. If anything, I'm probably riding a bit faster, but I'm not riding with the throttle wide open anymore. I get normally on a full tank full between 98 and 104 miles per gallon. That's what it works out at. I've never tried really riding it economically. Maybe as I get some more, I don't know. I would imagine if you cruise the highway at 55 miles an hour, you'd probably get about 110 miles per gallon. But that's only a guess. I haven't actually tried it. I couldn't be bothered to. Anyway, that's basically what's happening on the Himalaya for now. We do have 1 or 2 items coming through, and we'll be just discussing those more once we've had a chance to develop them further. Development hasn't ended on the Himalaya. We're getting a Euro 5 version soon in the UK. We've already got one in the USA. I want to do some work on the Euro 5. Basically, I think we're flogging a dead horse of being able to try to do anything with the fueling, because the ECU is pretty well locked down. Unless we can crack the coding to get into it, we can't put any sort of external fuel controller on it. You can't use booster plugs, you can't use power commanders, you can't use Powertronic. I know Powertronic are working hard to try and get around it somehow, but even they're really having a problem with it at the moment with the Euro 5 or BS6 models. So all that's in flux at the moment. We haven't stopped any development. It'll be ongoing. If there's anything, feedback you want to give me about it, get on to me by all means. I'll be riding this right through the winter. It is probably of all the bikes I've got, one of my go-to bikes. I tend to go to it the most, because it basically does what it says on the tin. It's not a pretentious bike. When I first saw this bike, I thought it was pig ugly, and it's actually grown on me a lot. I actually love it now. So, yeah, it's something that really grows on you. And I can see why people get really attached to them and are quite passionate about Himalayas, and I really love mine. So, moving from the Himalaya onto the Meteor 350, we've been asked by loads and loads of people who've got one on order, or have actually already got one. Are we doing anything for the Meteor? Will we be able to make it go faster? Which seems a bit of a strange question if you bought a bike with 20 horsepower, but fair comment. And this, that and the other, and well, we're going to make any accessories for it. The answer is, I've ridden one. I was really surprised by it, how nice it was. Build quality, I was very impressed. It almost feels up to Kawasaki build quality, I would say. So I was looking in the showroom next to a Kawasaki Cruiser, and quality-wise, I couldn't really see much difference between them. We've already got a few things on the drawing board that we're sort of working on, but we're really busy at the moment. But we will get onto it as soon as possible. We've got a bike coming this month. I didn't want one of the yellow or red Fireballs, and they were the only ones available at first in the UK. They seem to have a batch of the cheaper ones coming first. I wanted a Stellar black one, and I've got one on order, and it's due, I think, in about 2 weeks' time. And once we get that and get it run in and do a baseline dyno run on it, we'll move on from there. I'm sure there's things we can improve on it, but again, it's Euro 5 and it's locked. I have heard rumours that it's got some sort of electronic speed control on, but I'll base that on. I didn't actually have the one I rode was pretty new, and I didn't really want to cane it. I only had it up to about 60 miles an hour, so I didn't come to the point at 70 where supposedly the speed limiter comes in. But we'll look at that. If it is electronic, there will be ways to defeat that. I'm pretty sure of that. But I can't imagine a bike that's got 20 horsepower and weighs nearly 200 kilos is going to go much beyond 70 mile an hour, because it's not the most aerodynamic thing either. But it is a sweet little bike. I was very surprised by the demand for it, because I didn't really think that much on it really. That I thought that maybe 350 was a bit of a dead sector, that there wouldn't be a huge demand on it. But thinking about it, there's been a big resurgence in people wanting bikes to ride to work and use as leisure, bit going back to the 1960s. And when you look back at the early 60s, the predominant bike was a 350 4-stroke single. Every manufacturer had one, and you know, families used to ride around them with a sidecar on the side, and you know, it was the go-to size of bike, and they only had about 20 horsepower or less in those days. So I can see where people are coming from, that the people are moving away from public transport because of the COVID situation. They want independence to get to work cheaply. You can get through the traffic much easier on a bike. UK weather might put a few people off. I can see a lot of people wanting to fit handguards and heated grips and screens come the winter. A lot of people also want luggage carrying capacity for taking things like a change of clothes or waterproofs to work or whatever. But I can see the right to work market being very popular on it. Also, it's in a lower road tax sector as well, and it's very good on fuel. So all these things combined, that sector of the market is actually taking it up more than I thought. So it probably is people moving off a 125 onto something with a bit more street cred, a bit more comfort, and a bit better build quality, and not a lot of money as well. Let's face it, it's not much dearer than your bog standard 125 bike. So, and from what I've seen, this should last and hold the value pretty well as well. I mean, if you buy a Chinese 125, you probably lose 50% of your money straight away as soon as you roll out of the showroom. So that won't happen with a Royal Enfield. So it's definitely worth considering if you're in the market for that sort of thing. Also, another thing that surprised me, we have got an ageing base of riders in the country, guys of my age or older, who find it increasingly hard to ride heavier bikes, classics with kickstarts, and maintaining them as well. So they're getting into a sort of a classic-y type scene with a bike that brings back memory for guys that grew up in the 60s. That most of them actually owned a 250 or a 350 4-stroke single, and it's nostalgia is a funny thing. It takes people back to that, and performance is not as important for that market as well. Much more comfort, handling, and brakes, which the Meteor seems to excel at for its price point, and also nice little things like the clocks are nice on it, and the tripper navigation. So time will tell, but I know by Royal Enfield's order books and the fact that I've been pushing to try and get the bike I want, I'm literally really struggling to get one. Like I say, I've been promised one, and it should be here soon. But I know people have been waiting months and months for bikes, and when they all arrive, there will be a bit of a demand for parts for them. So watch this space on the Meteor. We already do have DNA, because they've had so much demand from the Indian market. They've already produced the high performance intake plate and washable high performance air filter for them. We do have these on the website now. We're working on about 20 product lines at the moment for them, which is not easy with this time of year because we're so busy, but we're working flat out trying to get stuff sorted for them. We will get a lot of that finalised when we get the bike and we'll ride it, and we can get final dimensions and fit checks and things like that on them before we put them into production. But some of the parts are still at prototype stage yet in development. But we are there, like I said, just to let people know that we are making the parts for them. Interceptor's development's still going. we are getting a Euro 5 Interceptor, because there has been quite a few changes on the Euro 5. We were waiting to see what happened with the new Interceptor. We think it's probably going to be called the Meteor, which is sort of like a Triumph Speedmaster. I don't know if you've seen the spy shots of it, but it's been spotted out and about in India. It's basically a Meteor type chassis with the Interceptor motor in it, with low slung pipes, big tank, cruiser type bars, forward controls, and I think they'll find, if they price it right, that they will have a very, very good marketplace in Europe with it, because there isn't really anything that's not Chinese in that sector of the marketplace at that sort of price point. Triumph don't make a 900 America anymore. They only make, or a Speedmaster. They only make a 1200 Speedmaster, which is about 12 or 13,000 pounds, and you'll probably be able to buy two of these new 650 Meteors, if they're going to call it a Meteor. I don't know. There may be a Thunderbird. That's another name that's been bandied around for it, but we'll just call it a 650 Cruiser for now, and we're all keeping a close eye on that. Personally, I don't think it'll be announced till probably the Intermot show in autumn time. I know they've actually booked a big stand for there, and we'll probably go to have a look. But Milan is normally where they tentatively announce these models. But I know when they announced the Interceptor, it took them nearly 2 years to get it to the marketplace after that, because they were just so busy with other things. So the demand for the current Interceptor and the Meteor and the Himalaya, unless they're up production, is probably going to delay things a bit, because I know in India they've got massive waits for bikes out there as well. So we'll see how that pans out. Like I say, we may get a Euro 5 Interceptor over the winter, just to see if we can do anything with the system that's on it. There's not that many changes on it that will stop our current parts being used on it. Like I say, we have tried one, and we know what will fit and what won't fit at the moment. Just a quick note on the Himalaya, in case you weren't aware, the Euro 5 does have quite a few changes on it, and one of them is the levers. The pre-Euro 5 levers won't fit, but we do now make the levers for the Euro 5 Himalaya. Don't try to fit the Euro 4 ones. They will actually go on, but they don't work correctly. They don't operate the I think it's the clutch switch, and I'm not quite sure about the brake switch, but they definitely don't operate the clutch switch correctly, because they've changed it, and you can damage the clutch switch if you use the wrong type of lever on the Euro 5. So just be aware of that if you're buying levers for it. If you're not buying them off us, a lot of the suppliers don't realise that the Euro 5 lever is different. Because I'm going to be riding this over the winter, we're going to be looking at heated grip conversions for it. So I'm going to be, I don't know whether we'll market any, because the market's pretty swamped with them, but I'm going to be trying a few different brands out and see what I think, and also monitor how the affect the charging system on this. I know they've got a pretty good charging system on, but what I don't want to do is find out, put a pair of heated grips on and find it flattens the battery. So we'll monitor all that, and I'll give you the feedback on that on the next update. So thanks for watching. Any questions, leave something on the comments below, or you can email us at info@tecbikeparts.com. Also click a like if you like it, and that's about it for now really. We'll see you soon. Bye.